April 11, 1970, Cape Kennedy, Florida. A Saturn V rocket stood on the launch pad, 363 feet tall, weighing 6.5 million pounds. It was the biggest rocket America had ever built. The mission was Apollo 13. 3 astronauts were strapped into the command module at the top. Jim Lovell, the commander, Jack Swigert, the command module pilot, and Fred Hayes, the lunar module pilot. Their destination was the Fra Mauro Highlands of the Moon. Their backup crew was supposed to fly instead, but the original commander had been exposed to German measles, and the crew had been swapped 9 days before launch. Apollo 13 was, by 1970, supposed to be a routine flight. NASA had already landed 2 crews on the Moon. The third would be ordinary. It was not. The launch was perfect. Apollo 13 lifted off at 13:13 Houston time on April 11th and reached orbit 12 minutes later. The crew settled in. They had a problem almost immediately. The center engine of the Saturn V's second stage shut down 2 minutes early. The other 4 engines burned longer to compensate. The crew reached Earth orbit safely, but the trajectory was slightly off. NASA decided to use the lunar module's engine to correct the course. This was the engine they would need for landing on the Moon. Using it early was a small, manageable deviation from the plan. 2 days into the mission, 200,000 miles from Earth, the crew was 55 hours into the flight. Jack Swigert flipped a switch to stir the oxygen tanks. The switch was the routine. The tanks were already full. At 55 hours and 54 minutes into the mission, oxygen tank number 2 exploded. The tank had been damaged on the ground during a test 3 weeks earlier. A heater had been turned too high, melted the insulation, and weakened the tank walls. The tank was scheduled to be replaced before launch, but it wasn't. The explosion tore off the side of the service module. The crew heard a bang, then a second bang, then a warning light they had trained for but never expected to see. Main bus B, undervolt. The light meant that half of the spacecraft's electrical power had just disappeared. Swigert said the words that NASA has used ever since. "Okay, Houston, we've had a problem." Lovell, looking out the window, said, "We are venting something out into the U-2014 into space." The crew had seconds to decide what to do. The command module, Odyssey, was dying. It was running on its last oxygen and its last power. The lunar module, Aquarius, was designed for 2 astronauts for 45 hours on the Moon's surface. It now had to keep 3 astronauts alive for 4 days, in deep space, on the way home. The crew floated from Odyssey into Aquarius, closed the hatch behind them, and began shutting down every system on the command module to save its batteries and oxygen for re-entry. Aquarius was a lifeboat. It was dark. It was cold. It had no heat except what the crew's bodies and the electronics gave off. The temperature inside dropped to about 38 degrees Fahrenheit. The crew could see their breath. They ate cold food. They slept in shifts. They were, by any measure, in the worst spacecraft emergency in the history of human spaceflight. The fix was simple and almost impossible at the same time. The crew had to fire Aquarius's descent engine to speed up, swing around the Moon, and use the Moon's gravity to slingshot back toward Earth. The burn had to last exactly the right amount of time. Too short, and they would miss Earth. Too long, and they would hit the atmosphere too steeply and burn up. The engine had been designed to land on the Moon. It had never been fired for an extended burn in space. It had never been used as a rescue engine. Back in Houston, a flight controller named John Aaron figured out the exact burn time by hand, 34.23 seconds. The crew counted together, 5, 4, 3, 2, U, 2014 fire. The engine lit. It worked. The burn was perfect. The crew was on a free return trajectory to Earth. They would miss the Moon by about 250 miles. They splashed down in the Pacific Ocean on April 17th. The Apollo 13 capsule, Odyssey, hit the water so hard that one of its parachutes ripped off. The crew were seasick and exhausted. A Navy carrier, the USS Iwo Jima, picked them up. They had lost 14 pounds each. Aquarius, the lunar module, drifted away in orbit and burned up in the atmosphere 8 hours later. The astronauts had been in space for 142 hours and 54 minutes. They had missed the moon by 250 miles. They had come home. NASA called the mission a successful failure. They had failed to land on the moon, and they had brought everyone home alive. The mission control team that saved them was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Apollo 13 was the last Apollo mission where Americans' lives were at risk on the way to the moon.